Down to that. After 5 o'clock right now, the mayor, John Tory, has joined the Oakley Show at Talk Radio, AM 640. Mayor, good to have you on board. Happy New Year to you.
And to you, John.
I appreciate your saying that. You're busy, I guess. You just didn't have any downtime over the holidays. Is there any?
Actually, that's not true. I had a bit, and it was good. And so I'm ready to go for 2017.
Are you? You're just raring to go. All right.
Yes, sir.
I understand. This letter that came out talks about something that intrigued me, civilian traffic wardens citywide when it comes to disruptions on the TTC with the service and whatever. So explain what that would be all about.
Well, first of all, it goes hand in hand with a request I made to the Premier earlier on to create traffic wardens, as you called them, which they have in many other cities, people who are not police officers but who do have the authority to direct traffic. And we just can't afford to have police officers doing that kind of work. So she, I think, had agreed to that, and that's underway. But we've now added giving some of the same powers to traffic constables, special constables that exist on the TTC, and so that when there are transit disruptions, whether it's planned ones where the subway's closed for construction on weekends or unplanned emergencies, they can direct traffic, have cars towed, because right now we find when those disruptions happen, the traffic gets into a mess and the police officers just aren't available quite often to direct the traffic.
Yeah, it sounds commonsensical. The only fly in the ointment, or at least the first that came to mind, is maybe the union would be resistant, and you could have both unions in play here if you'd like. But Bob Kinnear's group would say, wait a minute, you're seconding our help to do something that's extracurricular above and beyond the call of duty or a job description. How do you think that might fly?
Well, I'm not too sympathetic to any of that. I mean, times are changing, and people like Mr. Kinnear have to understand that, this is within, in my view, the duties of people who work in the transit authority, and that keeping traffic moving, including, by the way, transit vehicles, is an important part of their job. And so I just think that this kind of outdated thinking where everything is put down to being outside the job description and so on is outdated thinking, and that they've got to get in the 21st century, and that's what we're trying to do in terms of not using expensive police officers to direct traffic and keep transit moving when that could just as easily be done by transit enforcement officers.
And conversely, the Toronto Police Service, you think they'd be amenable to this? I mean, Mike McCormick might say, wait a minute, how come you're having these people assuming a role that we heretofore have filled? How do you think he'd respond?
But that's the problem, John. The police officers now can't fill those jobs, and I'm not sure they should. At the kind of, well-paid salaries they have and all the training they have to go out and deal with sort of what I'll call real crime and real problems in our city, including community policing and just being out there in the community. I think that's much better use of their time and the investment we have in them than having them, at transit bottlenecks directing shuttle buses. So I just think it makes sense all around. Everybody wins here. And that a lot of this kind of outdated thinking about trying to put rigid definitions around what people do and what they don't do should be relegated to the last century.
A lot of officers, or the last year anyway, a lot of officers top up their salaries doing this paid duty stuff. And you might even use your argument extended to say, well, maybe we could have civilian, in this case, traffic wardens or people doing, supervision on sites, city sites usually, because private concerns can hire as they see fit or accordingly. Do you think that would be a possibility as well?
That's the whole idea of the traffic wardens, is that you will have people who presently are, fully paid or sometimes paid duty police officers directing traffic, which I don't think they want to do. I mean, I think they are interested in doing, kind of more interesting police work. And so the whole idea here is to create a next category or another category of people who can direct traffic, whether it's in transit emergencies, which is what today's letter addresses, or generally speaking at some of those, say, top 10 intersections that we've identified in the city where things are a bit of a mess. And I just think it's going to be better, and we will know that people will be available to do that if they're in this category of either transit enforcement officers or these new traffic wardens. We haven't named them yet, but that's what you call them, and that's a fair enough kind of name for them.
All right. Well, this is the interesting thing, because in transit emergencies, TTC personnel could be seconded. But what about outside of that? Other paid duty assignments that you see police officers at, by the cones, the traffic cones and things like. Would that be a separate job, a separate entity that you would hire people accordingly?
Well, I'm not going to get into the business of kind of defining the line between what is presently paid duty, which, by the way, is an issue, as you know, of constant discussion in society at large about the paid duty. But I'm not going to get into drawing the line between that and what these new traffic wardens will do. But certainly, the intention of having somebody like a traffic warden, which we've asked the province for permission to do, and I should say, by the way, John, to me, I just find it astonishing the number of times we have to kind of go up the street tugging at our forelock asking for permission, to do things that just make sense. But having said all that, the whole idea is to have another category of people who are not fully trained police officers, because they don't have to be, who can either, frankly, watch for people making illegal left turns or manage traffic better, both of which will be good for all of us and make better use of expensive police officers.
It's great to talk. By the way, you do like the more powerful mayor system then that they've got in some state cities, Chicago being one that comes to mind, that kind of thing, right? That's what
it is. Yeah, but you know what, John? It's not so much about power. It's just about common sense. I'm accountable. I'm accountable to you. I'm accountable to your listeners, and I'm accountable in an election. I mean, if I was somehow, put in there for life and just left there and there was no accountability, then I'd say, well, maybe they need to keep a, pretty firm grip on what it is we're doing. But we've got a fully accountable government. It's managing a big city with a big budget and big problems, and this notion that we have to go and ask for permission all the time just doesn't make any sense. But that's an argument for another day.
All right, and we'll talk on that occasion, too. I appreciate your time, Mayor.
Thanks, John. Merry Christmas. Not Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
All right, all the best. Bye-bye now.
I thought he was Orthodox there for a minute. I thought, hey, maybe that's the real story. Mayor Tory is Eastern Orthodox.